Professor Kindiki Kithure's fate as Senate Deputy Speaker hangs in the balance. Remember, this comes days after his counterparts, Senator Kipchumba Murkomen and Senator Susan Kihika, were shown the door. His destiny will be made clear come Friday as senators converge to deliberate his impeachment. Well, this even as the country's COVID-19 crisis exacerbates as the country's tally surpasses the 1,000 mark. Now, in the last 24 hours, 2,621 cases have been tested with 66 confirmed cases. The number of recoveries have been recorded in the last 24 hours stand at 8. In the last 24 hours, no fatalities have been recorded. Now, since Kenya recorded its first coronavirus cases on March 13th, 2020, 49,405 cases have been tested so far. The number of confirmed cases stand at 1,029. The number of recoveries stand at 366, while the number of fatalities stand at 50. Good evening and welcome to Channel 1 News Hour. For now, let's take a look at the highlights.
Kenya has now hit a figure of over 1,000 positive cases to 1,029 cases.
Kenya records a record 66 new cases, bringing the total number of confirmed cases to 1,029 on a day the country received mobile labs. Low turnout as government conducts targeted mass testing in parts of the country. And political intrigues as Senate prepares to consider motion seeking to oust the Deputy Speaker Kithure Kindiki this Friday. Welcome to the broadcast. My name is Jackline Wambiru. Our sign language interpreter is Byron Aboli. Now, to kick us off, the National Emergency Response Committee has extended the cessation movement in and out of Eastleigh in Nairobi and Old Town in Mombasa for a further 17 days as part of efforts aimed at containing the spread of COVID-19. The extension coming as the country registered a record 66 new cases, raising the total number of confirmed cases in the country to 1,029.
The country on Wednesday witnessed the highest number of confirmed coronavirus cases since the first case was reported in March. Out of 2,621 samples tested, 66 cases were confirmed positive within a period of 24 hours.
Kenya has now hit a figure of over 1,000 positive cases to 1,029 cases.
The numbers forcing the government to act, extending the cessation of movement in and out of Eastleigh and Old Town areas.
As an extension of the cessation of movement in and out of Eastleigh in Nairobi until Saturday, the 6th of June, 2020. B, an extension of the cessation of movement in and out of Old Town, Mombasa, until the 6th of June, 2020. In addition to that, the malls, the eateries, restaurants are supposed to remain closed and hawking prohibited until Saturday, the 6th of June, 2020.
The two estates had been mapped out as COVID-19 hotspots, prompting the government to take additional measures to arrest the spread of the virus to other areas.
This, ladies and gentlemen, is essentially to keep the areas you contained so that in the next few days we can finally bring some form of control towards those areas so that the disease does not continue spreading.
Mombasa and Nairobi account for the biggest chunk of the new infections, standing at 30 and 26 respectively. In Mombasa, Likoni has 10 new cases, Kisauni 8, Changamwe, Nyali, Jomvu and Vita 3 new cases each. In Nairobi, Kibra has 15 new cases, Dagoretti 2, while Westlands, Eastleigh, Mathare and Dandora recorded 1 case each. The ministry receiving a major boost in the fight against the virus after receiving mobile laboratories said to be used in improving testing capacity at the Namanga border and Naivasha. With the number of confirmed coronavirus cases in the country having surpassed the 1,000 mark after 66 more people tested positive, the Ministry of Health is not leaving anything to chance and has extended the cessation of movement in and out of Eastleigh and Old Town in a bid to tame the invisible enemy. Nancy Okware, Channel 1 News.
Now, the government has enhanced COVID-19 testing among targeted groups as part of ongoing efforts to combat community spread of the deadly virus. The city's Eastleigh estate was Wednesday among targeted areas, with testing conducted at 3 points in an exercise that recorded low turnout. The area, which will be under partial lockdown until the 6th of next month, has been identified as a COVID-19 hotspot.
At the St. Teresa Boys Secondary School in Eastleigh, one of the 3 centers, which include New Eastleigh Primary School and Zawadi Primary School, that have been set aside for targeted testing, those seeking to test for COVID-19 slowly trickling in. Despite the exercise scheduled to commence at 10 a.m., with 300 people expected to undergo the test, only 15 people had turned up by 1 p.m.
So far, I've tested around, let's say, 15 there.
How many?
15.
15 people?
Yeah.
And how many are you expecting as of today?
We're expecting around 300. Yeah.
Organizers will remain upbeat that the number will be realized, forced to extend the deadline to 5 p.m. from the initial 3 p.m.
Okay, we are excited to close it at 3, but I'm seeing we will extend it. Yeah.
After tomorrow?
No, today we'll extend it around up to 5.
Eastleigh was put under partial lockdown for 15 days on the 7th of May, a cessation of movement that has now been extended to the 6th of June after the region continued recording high numbers of persons with COVID-19. But amid partial lockdown, the number of young people are now devising new tactics to earn a living. Such is the case for 26-year-old Moses Kipkosgei and 20-year-old Michael Mbwithe, who are now engaged in carpet washing business at Biafra.
Tuko watatu tu tulingangana, tukaanza na brush ya mkono, tukafikia mpaka kwa mashine. Na kama kungekuwa na uwezo tulikuwa tunaomba hadi tusaidiwe kidogo.
Na hii biashara iko sawa, ndio inatuletea chakula siku hizi, ndio inatusaidia siku hizi. Na ni biashara iko sawa, inatuletea pesa.
The two opting to literally make lemonade out of lemon, even in the face of mounting challenges.
Biashara iko chini kabisa kwa sababu mali ya kutoa tumefungiwa, hakuna kuvuka. Imekuwa ni ngumu kabisa, hadi sabuni kupata ni ngumu.
Tusaidiane, hii maisha ni mdogo na utapata. Huwezi kosa yako ya kila siku. Lakini pia gavana tusaidie kidogo tu.
Well, according to the national tally, the government has already surpassed the 900 mark of persons confirmed to have contacted coronavirus. Well, according to the government, they continue to activate more mobile laboratories as well as testing centers, just as this one at the St. Teresa's Boys here in Eastleigh, so as they can tame any further spread of COVID-19. Reporting for Channel 1 News from Eastleigh, Nairobi, I'm Serafina Robbie.
Now, still on COVID-19, the Council of Governors is calling on the national government to urgently disburse the 5 billion shillings pledge in support of the county government's emergency COVID-19 fund. Council of Governors Chair Wycliffe Oparanya says delay in disbursement of the funds have compromised county administration's ability to deal with the pandemic that has now spread to at least 22 counties.
Early last month, the national government committed to inject 5 billion shillings to the county government's emergency COVID-19 fund, a move that would increase the kitty's funding to 10 billion shillings, with county administrations having already committed 5 billion shillings to the kitty. Council of Governors Chair Wycliffe Oparanya now calling on the national government to honor the pledge, saying lack of funds is compromising efforts to contain the spread of the disease within the counties. This even as the council called for deployment of mobile testing centers to border counties to help them deal with the imported cases.
Despite 22 counties registering COVID-19 patients, the national government is yet to disperse the 5 billion shillings to the county government that His Excellency the President announced. We call upon the national treasury to urgently disperse these funds.
Meanwhile, Bungoma Senator Moses Wetangula has called on Kenyans to adhere to guidelines issued by the Ministry of Health to control the spread of COVID-19. Speaking in Mohoya village during the burial of his late brother, who is said to have succumbed to COVID-19 complications, Wetangula said observance of the guidelines was the most effective way of containing its spread. Only 60 people, including local leaders, were allowed to attend the ceremony. 48-year-old Anthony Waswa was until his death the personal assistant of his brother Tim Wanyonyi, who is the current MP for Westlands constituency.
Kwa hivyo nataka kuomba wananchi uchukue maagizo ya serikali kamilifu na muyafuate. Sanitize yourselves wherever necessary. Embrace very serious public hygiene and keep social distancing wherever we are. Same way vile tumekaa hapa ili tuepukane na ugonjwa ambao hatujui utatibiwa namna gani, hatujui utaondoka lini, hatujui mambo itakuwa namna gani.
In the meantime, some parts of Nairobi City County are experiencing water shortage at a time when the commodity is key in the fight against coronavirus. It is a sorry state of affairs that saw police officers from the city's Kayole area, led by Kayole Deputy OCPD Helen Mediva, volunteer to fetch water for vulnerable persons, including pregnant women and persons with disabilities. The officers also distributed face masks.
Tunafaa kusaidia kufight COVID-19 na tukajiuliza tutafight aje tukiwa tuko ofisi na hawa warembo, sio mimi peke yangu. Sasa ndio tukasema tuwezi shinda tunaambia watu atikafi tuanze jioni kusukuma watu waingie kwa nyumba. Tukaamua tunaweza reach watu, tuongee na wao mahali penye wako na need. Na tukaona need ya watu ya Obama huku ni maji.
Elsewhere, members of the clergy in Narok County have decried what they say is harassment by security agents when conducting online services.
We call on the government to come out clearly and explain to us why we are being discriminated and harassed by the police here in Narok.
The concerns coming as African Independent Pentecostal Church of Kenya Archbishop John Maura Njoroge defended the government over closure of churches. Speaking in Githongori during the burial of Hannah Kibunja, Njoroge challenged religious leaders to support the government in its efforts aimed at containing the spread of coronavirus.
Kama kuna vifaa hivi vya kupima ili watu waendelee kuingia makanisani, serikali ikipenda itupatie, tutakuwa tumetii.
Finally, Mombasa Rotary Club has lauded the efforts of healthcare workers who remain in the front line in the war on COVID-19. The group was at Mombasa Hospital where they presented healthcare workers with certificates and food items as a sign of appreciation.
Their jobs may be seen as a job, but to me, I think they are actually contributing a lot to community. I would look at it as a job that is actually a charity.
The dedication, the sacrifice, the resilience they exhibit. And let us pray that may God give them long life so that they can continue their noble work.
Beatrice Gatonyangetich, Channel 1 News.
Well, thank you so much, Beatrice Gatanying, a Teach for Thought report. Now, investigative agencies have set in motion an inquiry into reported human rights violation committed since the outbreak of COVID-19 in the country. To expedite the exercise, the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights disclosed that it is already tracking close to 150 instances where acts of criminality have been met on people, even as it emerged that 18 deaths linked to police brutality have been recorded since the declaration of the pandemic. And as Gladys Mungai reports, silence appears to be providing for atrocities to reign.
Cases of human rights violations in the country are said to be on ascendancy, especially now that the nation is battling COVID-19 pandemic. According to the Kenya National Commission of Human Rights, atrocious acts such as deaths, most of them perpetrated by law enforcers, have been recorded since a state of emergency was declared in the wake of COVID-19.
From issues of right to life, issues of access to basic services like food. My colleague talked about Dandora not having water, evictions happening, torture cases during the various measures that have been placed by the government to respond to the pandemic.
Evictions are coming at a time when actually they shouldn't. Why? Because we are fighting the COVID-19, and therefore when you evict, you expose those citizens to the dangers of contracting the COVID-19.
I think this period will continue to work together.
The human rights body disclosed on Wednesday that action is already being taken to curb this trend, especially in the remotest areas in the country.
We are in court over 3 cases where we've moved to court to challenge various human rights implications on some of the government's response to COVID.
That quarantine should not be a punitive measure. A distinction should be made between people who were going into self-isolation or quarantine because they had travelled to Kenya from abroad or because they had come in contact with somebody who had themselves tested positive for COVID, with those who were breaking the curfew. And I think as a result of the dialogue between the Human Rights Commission and the government,
KNHCR unveiled a joint partnership towards this endeavour, where 50 million shillings will be injected to boost the drive, particularly in rolling out grassroots empowerment programs to encourage citizens report violations.
where challenges to human rights are unfortunately seen, and we have seen that in some cases that colleagues spoke about, excess force from police, tragic deaths, that there is a redress mechanism available. And this is precisely what this grant today is about.
For Channel 1 News, I'm Gladys Mungai.
Now let's cross over to Ajay County, where concern over lack of adherence to Ministry of Health guidelines on the control of COVID-19 remains rife in the county, while the reality of the pandemic appears yet to sink in among some of the residents. Others are blatantly ignoring social distancing rule and the requirement to don a face mask. Now, the obtaining situation has seen the county administration engage 1,000 community workers to sensitize the public on the importance of adhering to guidelines already in place in fighting COVID-19.
With the effects of the coronavirus pandemic almost bringing activities across the world to a halt, a number of people are yet to understand the magnitude of the invisible enemy. In Wajir County, some residents can be spotted not observing social distancing guidelines as they go about their daily activities, perhaps oblivious of the danger lurking in their midst. The apparent recklessness evident within the region's markets as well as public places, as sections of residents ignore guidelines issued by the Ministry of Health aimed at controlling the spread of COVID-19 with reckless abandon.
Hakuna social distance. Watu tu wanasema tukivaa hii mask hata tukaribia hakuna shida. Hii mask ingine si watu hawafai kwa sababu wanajilinda hiyo ugonjwa, lakini kukuogopa tu serikali.
Vile tunakaribiana na watu kisocial distance, hiyo ninaona hata mimi niko mashakani, kwa sababu mtu mmoja akiwa na hiyo kitu hapa hata mimi mwenyewe nitakuwa kwa hiyo janga.
Sasa wengine waamini kama hii coronavirus iko wajia, wajaamini mpaka wa sasa. Watu wengi wananiambiaga hivyo wakati tunasukuka na wao.
Wajir County Commissioner Jacob Narengo urging the residents to observe the guidelines, warning them that ignoring the guidelines will come at a huge cost.
Mtu akikuja shopping town atafute mask bure. Ukikataa kununua mask ya shilingi 100 ama 200, tutakupatia cash bail. Tutakushika na cash bail itakuwa 10,000. Sasa you choose which one to go for.
The obtaining situation forcing the county government to act by enlisting the services of over 1,000 community health volunteers to conduct a sensitization campaign. The county boss, Ambassador Mohamed Abdi Mohamed, saying that his administration decided to explore a community-based approach to trigger behavioral change.
I will request and urge the people in Sokomujinga, the traders who are there, to strictly follow the health regulations, including having the masks, and they make sure that there are spaces between the stalls.
Health Chief Executive Committee member Ismail Isaac calling for cooperation with the volunteers as they undertake the noble task.
We ask the communities to be in cooperation, to work in cooperation with them. Whatever they are telling you is what has been trained, and it will go a long way in averting this disease.
Nancy Okware, Channel 1 News.
Now, on emerging issues courtesy of COVID-19, a number of patients suffering from non-communicable diseases such as diabetes and other cardiovascular diseases are calling on the government to consider channeling financial support to vulnerable groups in the wake of the coronavirus pandemic. The Korogosho Diabetic and Hypertensive Movement that is currently domiciled in Kariobangi area of Nairobi is concerned that people suffering from these conditions risk contracting the COVID-19 disease if no support is forthcoming. At the heart of Kariobangi North in Nairobi County, this group of people have converged at the facility for their weekly clinic for an initiative spearheaded by Korogosho Diabetic and Hypertensive Movement that seeks to sensitize patients battling chronic non-communicable diseases on how to manage risk factors, prevent and limit the impact of COVID-19 on those living with non-communicable diseases. Bob Felix Acero, who works in the transport industry and has diabetes type 2, is a beneficiary of the initiative and says the COVID-19 pandemic has taken a toll on him as well as his family.
Kulipa rent imekuwa ni shida. Chakula kupata ni shida. Madawa zile ambazo tunatumia ni lazima tutumie pesa kupata. Kupata hizo madawa kwa upande wangu saa hizi pia imekuwa ni challenge. Upande wa kiafya ninaona nazidi kudhoofika. Kwa hata saa hizi nimeanza kuwa na shida ya macho. Siwezi nikaona.
For Abigail Atita, adapting to the new normal has proven a Herculean task.
Kulikuwa na challenges, ni challenges tuna overcome. Kwa sababu sasa kama mimi ni fundi wa nguo, at least customer walikuwa wanakuja na shona, at least napata kitu. And then pia tukikuja hapa, unakuja ni mpaka ukue na pesa ya dawa. Hata pia kununua dawa imekuwa ni challenge, wengine wao ni biashara ndogo ndogo kama hizi unaona huku. I take precautions. I have to. We know corona is there. We've seen people die. We've seen them being admitted in the hospitals. But me as a diabetic patient, I don't have to expose myself. But I know corona is real and we are living with it.
Tribulations reflected among those seeking services at the center, including James Wathigo, who until the pandemic was a hawker in Islay.
Imekuwa gumu sana kwangu mimi kuweza kuingia pale kufanya kazi. Tangu wakati ambao kulifugwa, wiki mbili ambayo imepita, sijakuwa nikienda kufanya kazi. Mimi kwanza najihofia kimaisha kwa sababu mtu alikuwa anafanya kazi, alikuwa anaweza kupata chakula ya familia. Na pia pesa ya kujimudu kununua madawa na maisha.
According to the World Health Organization, people with pre-existing non-communicable diseases appear to be more vulnerable to becoming severely ill with the virus, urging them to adopt a healthy lifestyle, the key components being eating healthy diets with plenty of fruit and vegetables, keeping physically active, quitting smoking, limiting or avoiding alcohol intake, as well as getting enough sleep. And away from that, the coronavirus pandemic has resulted in a new normal, witnessing a shift in how people live. Faith-based organizations and religious leaders have in the past proved to be critical links in helping people cope with disasters and calamities through trauma healing and spiritual support. But what role should these critical groups play in the fight against the coronavirus pandemic?
Engaging, and we've been able to engage with the religious leaders, build their capacity on COVID-19, and also send them out to speak to their faithfuls in a language that they understand, using their religious scriptures, Quran for Muslims, Bible for Christians, with specific verses in those books, so that they can then be able to warn their faithfuls to take care of themselves, not to contract corona or COVID-19. And so we have seen religious leaders, the likes of Bishop Mark Kariuki, we've seen imams on TV. It is out of this initiative that they are able to now speak.
That report brings us to a fast break here on Channel 1 NewsHour. Don't go too far, we'll be right back.
Je, ungependa kujua jinsi ninavyojizuia kuambukizwa au kuambukizana virusi vya korona? Ni rahisi. Mwanzo, ninaziendesha shughuli zangu zote za kikazi na hata za kibiashara kutoka papa hapa nyumbani kwangu. Baadaye, ninaitunza mwili wangu vyema kwa kuiweka katika hali iliyo sawa kupitia mazoezi ya mara kwa mara na pia lishe bora. Mwishowe, ninaungana na jamii yangu pamoja na marafiki zangu kupitia njia ya simu au mtandao ili kuzuia dhiki na upweke wakati huu mgumu. Kumbuka, haijalishi kama uko na virusi vya korona au la, salia nyumbani, uokoe maisha.
This message has been brought to you by the Government of Kenya and its partners.
This weekend on KBC Channel 1.
I did not ask you, Atito, to introduce me to people. I know how these things work, okay? Feel free to pretend that you don't know me while we are there. And let me do what makes me happy, so should you.
Atito, you know it is outrageously funny how you are getting mad of an activity that you did not even sponsor, even with one coin. What is wrong with you today?
Correction, not lasting, but appreciating the view I present. Can you blame them?
So what do we call this kind of madness? To make it worse, those old pieces of clothes. What were you two thinking? Hey. Classmates, every Saturday on KBC.
And welcome back. Now, the number of people in Brazil who have died from COVID-19 has jumped by a new daily record of 1,179. President Jair Bolsonaro is, however, downplaying the risk associated with the disease at a time Brazil became the country with the third highest number of infections in the world. There are now over 5 million confirmed infections across the globe, with over 325,000 people succumbing to the disease globally.
The coronavirus pandemic appears to be rapidly gaining pace in Brazil. The country recorded 1,179 virus deaths over the past 24 hours, its biggest daily toll yet, bringing the overall death toll to 17,971. In terms of infections, Brazil has now the world's third highest number with 271,885 confirmed cases. Elsewhere, US President Donald Trump continued with his controversial comments on the pandemic, alleging that the US having the world's highest number of confirmed COVID-19 infections was a badge of honor. This even as all the 50 states in the US have now partially reopened. And World Health Organization member states have agreed to set up an independent inquiry into the global response to the coronavirus pandemic. The resolution, approved without objection by the WHO's 194-member annual assembly meeting virtually in Geneva, also allows for the inquiry to look into the health body's own role. In the meantime, the coronavirus pandemic is complicating cyclone evacuation efforts in India and Bangladesh as relief teams grapple with how to get millions of people to safety while also protecting them against the risk of COVID-19. Cyclone Amphan, currently the equivalent of a strong Category 2 Atlantic hurricane, is expected to make landfall late Wednesday afternoon local time near the Indian city of Kolkata, home to 14 million people and close to the Bangladesh border. Meanwhile, Thailand expects to have a coronavirus vaccine ready next year, with a senior official saying they have found a positive trial result in mice. Thailand disclosed that it will begin testing the messenger RNA vaccine in monkeys next week. And UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres says the relatively low number of confirmed cases in Africa has raised hopes that African countries may be spared the worst of the pandemic. While praising the continent for responding swiftly to the pandemic, Guterres, however, warned that millions of people in the continent could be pushed into extreme poverty due to the pandemic.
And on matters politics, the fate of Tharaka Nithi Senator Kindiki Kithure in the Senate leadership will be clear in the next 48 hours. This is after how the Speaker, Kenneth Lusaka, issued a gazette notice of a special sitting to consider the motion of his removal from the position of Senate Deputy Speaker. Safin Acheng Oma with the details.
Senators will convene for a unique session on Friday to debate the motion for the removal of Kindiki as Deputy Speaker. House Speaker Kenneth Lusaka issued a notice on Wednesday announcing the special sitting at the Senate chamber on Friday, 22nd May 2020 at 2:30 p.m. According to Lusaka, the senators will be meeting with a singular mission to consider the motion for the removal of Kindiki from the position of Deputy Speaker of the Senate. A notice of motion calling for the removal of Kindiki was formally tabled before the House on Tuesday by the newly installed Majority Chief Whip Irungu Kang'ata. Kang'ata is, however, yet to list grounds for the impeachment, but the move is linked to claims of disloyalty to the party, including his failure to attend Jubilee Senators' parliamentary group meeting called by President Uhuru Kenyatta last week. For successful removal of Kindiki as Deputy Speaker, at least 44 senators are required to vote in support of the motion of impeachment as outlined in Article 106, Section 2 of the Constitution. Meanwhile, a section of residents in Kikuyu constituency staged demonstrations against their lawmaker, Kimani Ichung'wah. The protesters accused the lawmaker of open disrespect and betrayal of President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is also the party leader of Jubilee.
Uhuru Muigai wa Kenyatta tulimpigia kura na tukamwambia sisi tumekupea Kimani, mwenda mkafanya naye kazi. Sasa hiyo kazi Kimani anafanya, mimi sijaelewa ni ya nini.
Waisongwa apatie Uhuru heshima kama vile amepatia baba yake Ichung'wah. akiwa hatukani Ishongwa awachane na Uhuru.
In the meantime, ANC Secretary General Barak Muluka has cautioned the Jubilee Party against allowing internal disputes to paralyze the entire nation. Muluka warns that the timing of the wrangles within the ruling outfit is ill-advised, given that the priority should be on how best to cushion Kenyans from the deadly coronavirus outbreak.
They ought to be able, if they have the competence that is desirable, to sort out their competitive dynamics within their party without getting the thing to spill over into public space and becoming a national crisis, particularly not at this time when there are so many other things that the country needs to focus on. We have got the new coronavirus that has virtually paralyzed not just the country, but the entire global community.
And finally, Nyandarua Governor Francis Kimemia is concerned that some members of the cabinet are using their positions as campaign platforms in readiness for 2022 elections. Speaking while distributing subsidized fertilizer to his constituents, the county chief lashed out at the state officials for allegedly incorporating national government-funded projects to solicit political support.
Kama unataka kuwa governor ama senator, ile kitu unataka kwanza fanya ile kazi umepatiwa na rais, maliza hiyo kazi, baadaye kuja tumenyane katika kiwanja, lakini msijifiche, mkulete matangi zinakuja za corona na maji, hatuambii, tunasikia tu nataka kuunganisha county commissioner na county government. Na mimi siwezi kubali, mimi si mjinga.
For Channel 1 News, I'm Safin Achieng Oma.
Now, on a separate matter, the Office of the Attorney General has temporarily halted marriage services at Sharia House. The decision, which was taken after the office recorded overwhelming numbers compromising the Ministry of Health guidelines on COVID-19, will allow for the creation of a proper roadmap on reopening and ensure safety.
Pre-COVID-19, weddings were one of the most extravagant affairs in the country, with budgets for some going to beyond the 5 million shillings mark. The past few months, however, have seen many Kenyans take what is the cheaper route to legally solemnize their unions. The growing number of people seeking to legalize their marriages at Sharia House has, however, seen the office now hold temporarily marriage services as they retreat to come up with a proper roadmap on reopening in an organized manner in line with the Ministry of Health guidelines. Caroline Kamar reporting for Channel 1 News.
Vote tallying and counting is underway in Burundi after polls closed this evening in an exercise where citizens of the East African nation were electing their new president, members of parliament and communal council members. So there were concerns over possible manipulation of election results, with social media platforms said to have become inaccessible as voting kicked off on Wednesday morning.
Voting has closed in Burundi, an exercise that was meant to elect a new president, with incumbent Pierre Nkurunziza stepping down after 15 years, with around 5 million voters participating in the general elections. 7 candidates are hoping to replace Nkurunziza as the next president of Burundi, with the governing CNDD-FDD party candidate Evariste Ndayishimiye and opposition leader Agathon Rwasa of the National Congress for Liberty considered the main contenders. Polls opened at 6 a.m. local time, with reports indicating that social media platforms including Twitter, WhatsApp and Facebook had been blocked, with only those using virtual private networks which mask a user's identity able to access the social media sites. Voters in the diaspora were not able to cast their ballot because of the coronavirus pandemic. The Electoral Commission had announced that there will be 53 international observers, who include personnel for the embassies of Tanzania, Egypt, China, Kenya, South Africa, Democratic Republic of Congo, Nigeria, Russia, and African Union mission to Burundi. The Commission had banned the use of mobile phones and cameras by observers and poll agents inside the polling stations. Preliminary results are expected to be out on Monday, on the 25th of May,
Under the new constitution, the winner will now serve an extended 7-year term, renewable once. The changes would have allowed Nkurunziza to serve as president until 2034, but he opted to retire. But with a new role to be known as the Supreme Guide to Patriotism, with Burundi's new president required to consult him on matters of national importance.
The government has declared Monday next week a public holiday to accord the Muslim community a chance to commemorate Eid al-Fitr, which marks the end of Ramadan. Now, the declaration was made on Wednesday by Interior Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i through a Gazette notice. Muslims began observing the holy month of Ramadan on April 23rd. These and more stories in our county briefs.
The government has declared Monday, May 25th a public holiday to allow Kenyans of Muslim faith to participate in Eid al-Fitr celebrations. The festival of Eid al-Fitr, the festival of fast breaking, is an important religious ritual celebrated by Muslims worldwide that marks the end of Ramadan, the Islamic holy month of fasting. This year, however, Muslims will have to contend with the complications brought about by the new coronavirus. In the meantime, transport along the Nairobi-Nakuru highway was temporarily paralyzed after hundreds of matatu operators in Naivasha held a demonstration to protest the decision to erect a roadblock on the road. The roadblock was mounted to help nab those fleeing from Nairobi during the current lockdown, but it has ended up inconveniencing hundreds of people traveling around Naivasha sub-county.
Sasa tunauliza tu serikali kusema kweli. Tutakuwa sisi ni watu wa Nairobi ama ni sisi ni watu wa Nakuru County? Hii roadblock iliwekewa ya Nakuru. Paka Nakuru iko ndani ya Nairobi.
Meanwhile, Mandera County has flagged off tons of relief food supplies to help cushion families affected by floods. Speaking while flagging trucks to 4 affected sub-counties, Mandera Deputy Governor Mohamed Arai noted that the county administration has set aside a relief kitty to help the displaced families.
The Special Programs team of the county dispatched a multi-sectoral team to conduct a rapid response assessment in the sub-counties affected in order to quantify the level of risk emanating from the flash floods.
And the government's initiative for Kazi Mtaani program is on course, with about 26,000 youths having been recruited as cohorts in various parts of Nairobi County informal settlement areas. The program is geared at integrating jobless Kenyans in urban hygiene and sanitation works across 23 informal settlements countrywide.
We are doing this program because we want to assist our youth. Many of our youth have lost their opportunities, their jobs, because of the coronavirus. Government is coming in to bring an intervention measure to assist you be able to put food on the table.
The National Cohesion and Integration Commission has in the meantime announced that it will be moving to court to block politicians propagating hate amongst Kenyans against contesting elective positions. Commissioner Wambiru knew to say that some of the politicians are taking advantage of COVID-19 to carry out campaigns which might jeopardize the country's long-term stability.
People think that when they incite others, they will gain popularity among the people, and that is the unfortunate bit. But we want to warn them. You may gain your popularity now, but when you will need it most, you may not get it. Because for you to vie for a political seat, you must, meet the requirements of the Chapter 6 of the Constitution.
And finally, the first family has eulogized the late Hannah Wanjiru Kibunja, the wife of the country's founding President Jomo Kenyatta's longtime confidant and friend, Elijah Kibunja Kinuthia, who was laid to rest on Wednesday at her farm in Kiambu. In a message read on his behalf by Kiambaa lawmaker Paul Koinange, President Uhuru Kenyatta hailed Wanjiru as a citizen who cherished unity and will forever be remembered for her devotion towards the less fortunate.
Her exemplary virtues of diligence and dedication, both at community and national levels, will remain a great inspiration to many generations to come. Therefore, as we mourn and pay homage to this visionary lady, let us also celebrate her life and achievement.
For Channel 1 News, I am Emily K. Bade.
That report by Emily K. Bade brings us to a second break here on Channel 1 News Hour. Up next is the business news of the day. Don't go too far. We'll be right back.
Yeyote aliye na kinga hafifu mwilini yuko katika hatari ya kuambukizwa COVID-19.
Tell him to get cracking.
I think the only reason you're pushing for this is because you want to keep Wanjala from training. Mean nothing to you now.
It's a subject not worth exploring.
Wanjala!
Pata habari kuhusu COVID-19 kupitia vyanzo vinavyoaminika. Piga 719 au bonyeza *719#.
Hapo basi nyinyi ndio mwanamke mnavokosea.
Young man, you are way out of line.
Are you on her side ama are you with us?
Sikuelewa teacher akifunza mambo ya photosynthesis na pollination.
Hiyo ni siara ya nini?
Hakuna. Nilikuwa nimenunua shopping kaja nayo jana hapa.
Saiwa sana ununua vitu zingine. Kuna hasara hapo.
Hata uweza kuizi na matajiri hata kidogo.
Uncle Job alisema atafunga nyumba.
Mudhe, tafadhali tu nipatie tu dakika moja. Mimi Job unakula chakula ya watoto seriously.
Tiffany must not leave the country.
Aisha pango.
I think we should leave.
And on matters business, Kenya's Big Four agenda has received a major boost after the country secured 106 billion shillings from the World Bank under development policy operation. National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani says the money will go towards financing agricultural input subsidy, affordable housing and improving transparency.
The concessional loan from the bank comprises 76 billion shillings credit from the International Development Association at an interest rate of 1.35% with a 30-year repayment with a 5-year grace period. The remainder 21 billion shillings will be advanced by the International Bank for Reconstruction and Development, which is the development arm of the World Bank.
We've had substantial and drastic reduction of revenue as a result of the poor performance of all the areas, including the import duty and the service sector. The COVID pandemic, adding to these effects of locust invasions and current floods experienced in parts of the country, is expected to significantly slow down economic growth.
Treasury Cabinet Secretary Ukur Yatani says the funds will go towards budgetary support at a time when revenue collection is expected to drop by close to 500 billion shillings. The development assistance is the third credit facility this year after the bank announced another package of 74 billion shillings earlier this month and 6 billion shillings to strengthen the health systems in the face of COVID-19 pandemic.
The DPO is a series of policy-linked reforms anchored on the Big Four agenda, namely food security, affordable housing, universal health coverage, and manufacturing. The implementation of the Big Four priority areas is expected to support higher and inclusive economic growth, faster job creation, and a reduction in the cost of living for the poor.
World Bank Country Director Felipe Jaramillo has urged Kenya to embark on fiscal consolidation once the pandemic is over in a bid to align its budget. At 107, this is the largest loan to Kenya by the Washington-based lender.
Kenya is taking a comprehensive approach in dealing with increased risk in public debt. Improved revenue mobilization and spending discipline should reduce budget deficits, while the best practice in debt management will help the country manage public debt in a transparent and prudent manner. In the meantime, the government continues to use its access to concessional facility and minimize commercial borrowing.
Kenya's development board has been on the chopping board as the country realized its expenditure plan to deal with the coronavirus.
A serious restructuring is in the offing at the National Cereals and Produce Board with the creation of 3 arms separating various functions of the board. Agriculture Cabinet Secretary Peter Munya has directed the newly appointed technical committee to commence immediate vetting of all employees to determine their suitability in a move expected to enhance transparency at the institution, which has been riddled with graft allegations. Here is Alan Aoko with the details.
Imagine this, in the 1960s, Kenya was able to feed its entire population 100%, but coming to 2015, the National Food Reserve has depleted to 75%. It is these measures that now the government is saying has to be streamlined. With the amalgamation of National Cereals and Produce Board and the Strategic Food Reserve nearing completion following the revocation of an act which establishes the latter, fresh blood is now expected at the helm of one of the country's key food security agencies.
I wish to thank the government most sincerely for intervening to streamline duplication between NCPB and SFR on roles that NCPB can manage seamlessly without deploying additional staff or equipment.
The reforms being implemented are backed by a task force report handed over to the government in March last year, which recommended an immediate restructuring of NCPB and the SFR to make them efficient and autonomous.
Yule hata saidika ni yule anataka kuendelea kuweka mikono ndani na kupora mali ya umma. Huyo hayuko hapa. Huyo anatasikia baridi. Lakini yule mfanyikazi Mkenya na biashara ambaye anataka kufanya biashara halali na mkulima pia ambaye lazima apate manufaa kwa kazi yake ya ukulima, hawa watafaidika kwa hii reforms.
The ministry is also keen on establishing National Food Reserve Division within NCPB to focus on commercial activities. The restructuring of the board will also pave way for the creation of a second arm, the NCPB Trading Division, to compete with other commercial entities.
NTD will operate an encumbered commercial agricultural hub model, clustering registered small, medium order farmers and agro dealers around aggregation centers, which would include cooperatives and warehouses for storage, bulk input sourcing, marketing, and extension support.
On the other hand, the Food Balance Sheet Committee within the NCPB will act as a statistical and advisory organ. With the new changes, staff of the board will not be spared as vetting by technical committee and NCPB board now looms. The government now looking into restructuring and reforms to make sure that going forward, Kenyans do not go hungry because of food reserve issues and national food management. Alan Aoko reporting for Channel 1 Business in Nairobi.
And on a separate matter, up to 60 million people will be pushed into extreme poverty by the coronavirus, the World Bank has warned. World Bank President David Malpass projects global economic growth to shrink by 5% this year as nations deal with the pandemic. Details of these and other stories from the international scene.
The Washington-based lender is offering $160 billion in grants and low-interest loans to help poor countries tackle the crisis. World Bank President David Malpass said that 100 countries, home to 70% of the world's population, had already been granted emergency finance. The World Bank worked with the International Monetary Fund on a scheme to allow poorer countries to request debt relief on payments of loans owed to G20 members until the end of this year. The pandemic has already led to millions losing their jobs and businesses failing, with poorer countries feeling the brunt. At the same time, Jamie Dimon, chief executive of JP Morgan Bank, said the coronavirus pandemic must serve as a wake-up call to build a fairer society. The World Bank defines extreme poverty as living on less than $1.90, which is equivalent to 201 shillings and 40 cents per person a day. Elsewhere, UK's inflation rate fell in April to its lowest since August 2016 as economic fallout of the first month of the lockdown hit prices. Falling petrol and diesel prices plus lower energy bills were the main drivers pushing inflation lower. According to the Office of National Statistics, the Consumer Price Index fell to 0.8% from 1.5% in March. Jonathan Atho, Deputy National Statistician for Economic Statistics at the ONS, said while the coronavirus limited the availability of some goods and services, its effect on prices was more muted. He said that food prices generally rose no more quickly than other goods and services, though fresh vegetables did see stronger rises. But prices of games and toys rose, which the ONS said may have come as people occupied their time at home. Most economists had expected inflation to fall to a 0.9% last month and have a predicted rate that will fall further as the economic fallout of the pandemic continues. CPI is now far below the Bank of England's 2% target. Finally, Johnson & Johnson announced Tuesday it would stop selling its Talak baby powder in the United States and Canada, saying demand had dropped in the wake of what it called misinformation about the product's safety amid a barrage of legal challenges. J&J faces more than 19,000 lawsuits from consumers and their survivors claiming its talc products caused cancer due to contamination with asbestos known as carcinogen. Many are pending before a U.S. district judge in New Jersey. J&J has faced intense scrutiny of the safety of its baby powder following an investigative report by Reuters in 2018 that found the company knew for decades that asbestos lurked in its talc. However, it is still uncertain if this development will affect the sale of Johnson & Johnson talc baby powder across other parts of the globe, including Kenya, where the powder remains on the shelves. Regina Manyara Guitar reporting for Channel 1 Business.
Coronavirus COVID-19 is a respiratory virus spreading across the world. The infection is spread from droplets of coughing and sneezing of an infected person, touching or shaking hands or being in contact with contaminated surfaces or objects with the virus. The signs and symptoms are fever, coughing, headache, body ache, difficulty in breathing. The disease can be prevented by regularly washing hands with soap and running water. Avoid close contact with people who have flu-like symptoms. Avoid handshake, hugs, and kissing. Also, protect yourself by covering your mouth or nose using a disposable tissue while coughing or sneezing. If you experience these symptoms and you had traveled or been in contact with a person from a country reporting COVID-19, you should isolate yourself for 14 days. Dial *719# or call 719. This message has been brought to you by the Government of Kenya and its partners.
Hey, what's up everybody? Mambo Whippy, this is Gladson Peter aka One Man Band India. Catch me live from India on the Good Morning Kenya show aka GMK this Thursday morning from 9 a.m.
Welcome back. Now, in the sports, Guinea is considering co-hosting the 2025 Africa Cup of Nations with Senegal. The president of the Guinea Football Federation, Mamadou Antonio, has proposed to the governments of Guinea and Senegal to co-host the biennial men's football event. However, Guinea's Minister for Sports, Sanusi Bantamba, has opposed the proposal, saying that the country wants to host the first ever continental tournament alone. Guinea were initially set to host the 2023 tournament, but were awarded the 2025 event after Cameroon was stripped of the hosting right of the 2019 edition and then awarded the 2021 edition. In 2012, Gabon and Equatorial Guinea jointly hosted the men's football event, just like Ghana and Nigeria in the year 2000. The 2023 tournament will be held in Ivory Coast. Well, that brings us to the end of our bulletin this evening. Thank you for keeping it Channel 1 NewsHour. Now, remember, maintain hygiene, social responsibility, adhere to government's directive on curbing the spread of coronavirus. My name is Jackline Wambiru. Our sign language interpreter this evening was Byron Abuli. Up next is the weather updates. Have a good night.